Yo, the second largest company in the world is currently discussing the possibility of adopting Bitcoin, and it's taken it to a shareholder vote that will happen December 10th. And this $3 trillion giant is sitting on $484 billion in assets on the balance sheet that is currently melting away. We all know the Ice Cube meme of it's not in Bitcoin, it's melting away. But so which company is it? Of course, you probably noticed from the thumbnail, we're talking about everyone's favorite Bill Gates and the company he founded in 1975, Microsoft. Even though Gates has stepped away from Microsoft, he is famous for saying, if there was a way to short Bitcoin, I would. Which is interesting because there is a way to short Bitcoin, but that's besides the point. But now his company, Microsoft, or ex-company, however you want to look at it, is looking to adopt Bitcoin, which is a very interesting development. And we've said it in the past, actually, we said it all of this year, that by the end of this year, 2024, and going into 2025, we would be seeing some of the biggest names in the world start to talk about adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And it looks like it's happening. These conversations are happening at the highest level. It looks like Bitcoin is matured. It's becoming something that people have to take seriously, which, of course, we've been saying forever here, guys. So let me pull up this news story. But, of course, before I do that, let me bring in my guest for the day. We got our boy, Brandon Gentile, coming off the bench. You guys know it. Me and Brandon kill it every single time we come on. So, Brandon, good to have you, bro. Let's pull up some of the source material for everyone in the chat. Of course, this hit Twitter last night, roughly around 4 p.m. in the evening. And here's a tweet from Macroscope. And I actually today, guys, I am going to read a little bit, actually all of this, because there's a lot of sauce in this filing. So in an SEC filing late this afternoon, Microsoft disclosed that, quote, an assessment of investing in Bitcoin is currently proposed and will be a voting item for the shareholder meeting on December 10th. So looking at this proposal here, I am going to read this, guys. Like I just said, there is a lot of sauce here, and I think this is very informative for people that aren't as close to Bitcoin, aren't following macroeconomics and inflation as much as we are, and there is a lot of sauce here, and a pretty big shout out in here. So let's just get into it. Proposal 5, assessment of investing in Bitcoin, a shareholder proposal. And we go Bitcoin diversification assessment. Supporting statement. In periods of consistent and often rampant inflation, a company's financial status is unfortunately measured not only by how well it conducts its business, but also by how well it stores the profits from its business. Hence, we always tell you guys that the current state of the world is everyone has to become an investor, whether you're a big corporation or an individual. It's not enough to just make money and have a profitable business. You have to figure out where you store that value so that you can beat inflation or, rather a bad economy. Anyways, again, going back to this assessment, corporations that invest their assets wisely can and often do increase shareholder value more than more profitable businesses that don't. Therefore, corporations have a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value, not only by working to increase profits, but also by working to protect those profits from debasement. Again, this is coming from the head of Microsoft, and they're saying exactly what we've been saying here on the show constantly. The average inflation rate in the U.S. over the last 4 years, according to the CPI, which is a remarkably poor and corrupt measure of inflation, is 5.03%. Again, we constantly tell you guys this, and inflation peaked at 9.1% in June 2022. But in reality, the true inflation rate is significantly higher than that, with some studies estimating it to be nearly double the CPI at times. So a corporation's assets have needed to appreciate at those rates over the last 4 years just to break even. Again, hear it here from Microsoft heads talking about the fact that CPI is broken and or corrupt. And, for the average person, if you aren't making at least 10 to 20% raises every year, you are not beating inflation. And further, if your investments aren't making more than 10 or 20%, you are not making any profit. Yes, it looks good on your balance sheet, your personal portfolio, but you are not beating inflation. And then here we go. Here's some more bulk. As of March 31st, 2024, Microsoft Corporation has $484 billion in total assets, the plurality of which are U.S. government securities and corporate bonds that barely outpace inflation, if assuming that the CPI is accurate, which it isn't. So bond yields are actually lower than the true inflation rate. Again, something Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time on Twitter. And we've been saying on the show as well. And now, of course, don't take it from two guys on YouTube or maybe some anons on Twitter. The biggest, second largest company in the world, CEOs and heads, the C-suite class are saying the exact same thing we've all been saying. So further evidence that Bitcoiners are right, that we see the world clearly and things aren't exactly as they seem. And also clarifying the 484 billion in total assets. I think I looked this morning, I use, Perplexity AI. I've been telling you guys I'm a huge fan of that lately. And they roughly have 18 billion in cash. So 18 billion is liquid. Everything else is in other assets. But the point remains the same. If they are not putting that money in Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. They are most likely not beating inflation and, like they're saying, barely breaking even. Therefore, in inflationary times like these, corporations should and perhaps have a fiduciary duty to consider diversifying their balance sheets with assets that appreciate more than bonds, even if those assets are more volatile short term. Again, another thing we've been saying on this show, that most people that are aware of what's going on in the financial system are looking for alternatives to treasuries and bonds, which historically have been the least risky asset in the world. And now people are looking for alternatives, hence why they're taking this vote to their shareholders, because, hey, maybe there's something better than bonds out there. Maybe you don't want to be holding U.S. debt. Anyways, going further, as of June 25th, 2024, the price of Bitcoin increased by 99.7% over the previous year, outperforming corporate bonds by roughly 94% on average. And over the past 5 years, the price of Bitcoin increased by 414%, outperforming corporate bonds by roughly 411% on average. And here's an interesting nod, guys. MicroStrategy, which, like Microsoft, is a technology company, but unlike Microsoft, holds Bitcoin on its balance sheet, has had its stock outperform Microsoft stock this year by 313%, despite doing only a fraction of the business that Microsoft has. And they're not alone. The institutional and corporate adoption of Bitcoin is becoming more commonplace. Microsoft's second largest shareholder, BlackRock, offers its clients a Bitcoin ETF, even though Bitcoin is a more volatile asset at the moment than corporate bonds. So companies should not risk shareholder value by holding too much of it. However, as Bitcoin is an excellent, if not the best hedge against inflation, and corporate bond yields are less than the true inflation rate, companies should also not risk shareholder value by ignoring Bitcoin altogether. At minimum, companies should evaluate the benefits of holding some, even just 1% of its assets in Bitcoin. Again, another point we've been talking about on the show, that ever since the BlackRock ETF, not only is Bitcoin maturing, not only is it kind of becoming a legitimate investment, but we've been saying that every company at the very least should hold 1% of their assets and their balance sheet on Bitcoin. And now the highest holds at Microsoft, again, the second largest company in the world with roughly $3 trillion in market cap, is talking about the very same thing we talk about here constantly. So the resolve: shareholders request that the board conduct an assessment to determine if diversifying the company's balance sheet by including Bitcoin is in the best long-term interest of shareholders. Now, here is the interesting part about this report here. The company statement in regards to whether this is a good idea or not. Currently, the board is saying that they should vote against this. So the proposal requests that the board conduct an assessment that is unnecessary because Microsoft management already carefully considers this topic. Microsoft Global Treasury and Investment Services team evaluates a wide range of investable assets to fund Microsoft ongoing operations, including assets expected to provide diversification and inflation protection and to mitigate the risk of significant economic loss from rising interest rates. Past evaluations have included Bitcoin and other cryptos among the options considered, and Microsoft continues to monitor trends and developments related to crypto to inform future decision making. As the proposal itself notes, volatility is a factor to consider in evaluating crypto investments for corporate treasury applications that require stable and predictable investments to ensure liquidity and operational funding. Microsoft has strong and appropriate processes in place to manage and diversify its corporate treasury for the long-term benefit of shareholders, and this requested public assessment is unwarranted. So again, a couple trends here. Obviously, as a Bitcoiner, I'm a Bitcoin maxi. My bias is obviously very transparent. I like to think of Bitcoin as the real stablecoin. Bitcoin is the true stability in the world. And yes, the volatility in fiat price does seem to fluctuate a lot, but it's really the fiat money, the fiat world, the traditional financial world that is volatile against Bitcoin. Again, the meme, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, and everything is going to get repriced in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is volatile, but it's volatile to the upside. And another point, it's very interesting that they say they have considered this in the past. And, of course, I think this is going to be a mistake long term when they talk about the returns. It's becoming very obvious that you need to have some Bitcoin on your balance sheet, personal balance sheet and company balance sheet. But it is interesting that they're like, no, guys, we got it here. We've assessed the risk and it's not worth it. Now, moving forward, Saylor tweeted this morning, which is really interesting, shouting out the CEO of Microsoft, the current CEO of Microsoft. And he goes, if you want to make the next $1 trillion for Microsoft shareholders, call me, bro, which is just absolutely hilarious. I know you guys have heard Saylor, and Saylor's been in some hot water recently, but Saylor has been going out that if you want to see, if you're on these big corporations, Apple, Microsoft, etc., and how do you add an extra $1 trillion to their balance sheet? Well, it's very simple. You just adopt Bitcoin, you add it to your balance sheet, or you start to do the infinite money glitch, the flywheel, the Bitcoin flywheel that Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy has performed masterclass out there. Anyways, this next thing, just kind of looking into who these shareholders are. Again, I'm using perplexity.ai. I'm a huge fan of it recently. I just did a little search, Microsoft shareholders by percentage, and it's very interesting to see who some of these top institutional shareholders are. We have Vanguard with 8.95% to roughly 9% of the stake of Microsoft. Again, remember the Vanguard debacle. Their CEO, Tim Buckley, retired shortly after the Bitcoin ETF was launched, and they famously came out and said, we're not going to allow our customers to use the BlackRock ETF or get exposure to ETFs. And then shortly after, he retired, which all of us Bitcoiners were scratching our head and like, kind of a coincidence. Did he leave because they forced him out because they're missing all the gains of Bitcoin? No one knows, but the coincidence is there. And then, of course, second is BlackRock with roughly 7.25 to 7.45 a stake. Of course, they have the IBIT ETF, the BlackRock ETF. It's killing it out there. And then there's State Street Corporation with 4% roughly. And then Fidelity Investments with 2.91 to 2.95%, which, of course, they have a Fidelity ETF as well. So even if Vanguard is against Microsoft adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet, BlackRock and Fidelity, who already have exposure to Bitcoin, do have a bigger amount of shares. So it is going to be interesting. Of course, this proposal is going to happen December 10th, which is about 6 weeks away. But going more and deeper into this, as James Lavish said this morning, the significance of this is clear. Bitcoin can no longer be simply ignored by public companies and must be considered for their balance sheets, which is something we've been talking about. So it's very interesting that they're having this conversation. They have to bring it to a shareholder vote because obviously people are talking about it and they're looking at Microsoft and they're like, well, we're holding these melting ice cubes and we have $484 billion in assets, and maybe there's a way that we can increase that shareholder value by just buying some Bitcoin. And not only that, it's going to be very interesting that if people aren't educated themselves in Bitcoin, they're going to have about 6 weeks. So now you can tell they're talking about Bitcoin, and now they're going to have until December 10th to educate themselves about Bitcoin. And so it's going to be very interesting when this happens, whether they do add Bitcoin. Not only would it be huge for Microsoft and, of course, the Bitcoin community, but now in the highest echelons of corporate America, traditional finance, they have to start to educate themselves on Bitcoin. And I think that watershed moment is about to happen. Now, another interesting quote here, shouts out to BTC Gandalf on Twitter. he got this quote from the current CTO of Microsoft, Kevin Scott. And the quote comes from an interview he did with Wences in 2019. And here's the quote: "You can't have a government decide that they're going to get their way out of their poor decision making by just creating more of them." Obviously, they're talking about fiat money and all of the bad monetary policies they do. I don't know why I hadn't had that thought before, but that's really an incredible, powerful notion. Obviously, talking about Bitcoin, and I don't think we've collectively internalized what that could possibly mean for society. I think he's talking about obviously the masses out there, but personally about him and the people at Microsoft. So you can tell these conversations are happening. And adding a little more, cherry on top of this, there is this picture here of the current CTO. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name. Satya Nadella, I believe. Apologies. Going around on Twitter. Of course, it's a picture of him with Adam Back and Samson Mao. Of course, Samson Mao is on the mission of getting nation states to adopt Bitcoin. Adam Back was literally referenced in the Bitcoin white paper. So I think at the highest levels, it's not that they're uneducated about it. Obviously, the volatility concerns are something that people think about. But it is very interesting development. We have been saying this would happen for a long time on Simply Bitcoin, that ever since the BlackRock ETF got announced, everyone has to take Bitcoin seriously. And now we are getting more and more data points that this is happening. So, hey, is this going to happen? I don't know. The Microsoft board is basically saying, look, we don't have to do this, where we're telling our shareholders to vote against this, but they're having this conversation. They're going to have to make a decision December 10th. And I think this is happening not only at Microsoft, but I could only venture to guess that this is also happening at Apple. We know Tesla is already holding Bitcoin. They're the 12th largest company in the world. So everyone in the world and all the biggest companies in the world now have to take Bitcoin seriously. And it's becoming very obvious, again, referencing Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, that this might be the best strategy to outperform inflation. So I thought there was a lot of information in there. Obviously, we constantly come on the show and try to educate people on not only the nefarious nature of the gaslighting by the Federal Reserve or the international bankers and the politicians in regards to how bad inflation really is, but also that, hey, if you want to survive, you have to become an investor. And as we said before, ever since BlackRock came into the game, love or hate Larry Fink here, every institutional manager in the world has to look at Bitcoin. It's becoming their fiduciary responsibility, like they said in that report, that you have to at least take Bitcoin seriously. And hey, they're only talking about a 1% investment into Bitcoin, or rather, reserve in a balance sheet, which is pretty interesting that they're kind of only thinking of this as an investment versus, an asset to hold on their balance sheet. But interesting developments we have here today. And of course, we'll cover this when they finally make the decision. But I'm guessing that by the end of this year and going into 2025, I'm going to guess by like Q2, we're going to see all of the biggest companies, all the biggest names in the world start to talk about Bitcoin in a serious light versus kind of relegating us into the corner and be like, oh, I don't want none of this internet money. Of course, referencing my opener here, Bill Gates, of course, he's not at Microsoft anymore, but he famously said, I would short Bitcoin. And then, remember the Charlie Mungers of the world and Warren Buffett's of, oh, Bitcoin is rat poison. I don't want any of this. So it's very interesting how in 1 year, the narrative has shifted to, yeah, maybe we need to take this Bitcoin thing seriously. And here we are. Anyways, I've ranted it enough. I'm sorry I had to read a lot for you guys, but I thought there was a lot of sauce on this in this report for everyone out there to kind of explain to you guys what we say on the show constantly and get a little insight into what corporations are thinking and their thought process, which again, we're right here. I know you guys think I'm just a 65 IQ Bitcoiner on YouTube, but hey, I got a little smarts. I kind of understand some things going on in the world. Anyways, Brandon, what's your thoughts on all this?
Well, yeah, you definitely have a little smarts. You can't wax poetic for 15 straight minutes if you don't know something. So what's the thing? If you know something really well, you can teach it or you can speak on stage on it for an hour or whatever it is. So you're definitely there. And also really quick, yeah, someone said earlier, Opti's lettuce, when it's out flowing like that, yeah, man, his knowledge just pours out. So
wait, what? I don't even know what this lettuce meme is. I don't even know what this lettuce meme is.
It's the hockey flow. It's the flow. It's the hair, man. You got the lettuce flying in the wind. It's amazing. Perplexity, also amazing. A big Scott Adams, push there too. He's been talking about a lot. But yeah, you're right, Opti. I mean, between FASB, like you can see that people don't have their talking points. When we talk about the ruling class, they don't have their talking points fully, all synced up. Right now, you've got the ECB attacking, you got central banks attacking Bitcoin, but then we have FASB rules changing in our favor. It's just all over the place. There's a lot of there's so much. I don't know what the right word is, but there's just a lot of lack of cohesion. We'll say that there's a lot of lack of cohesion just across the world when it comes to a lot of these global entities, and they don't know what to do. And you have these structures, these political structures, and they're built on top of a monetary standard. And that's what I think that it took me a long time to kind of realize that too. Really 20 years in the 2000s, and then the 2010s. It took me a long time until 17, 18, 19, when I started to realize, oh my gosh, the money is that layer that the society is built on, but it's more the political game is built on top of that money layer, right? So you can't have capitalism, or you can't have socialism, or you can't have any of these things, no matter what it is, democracy, republics, you can't have them unless they're built on a certain monetary layer, right? And then some monetary systems will behoove certain systems, correct? So like we kind of split off and diverge in these paths. But that's this world we're in, where like we're transitioning to completely new standards, and we just get to live through it. I mean, this is generally stuff that you read a history book and you're like, oh, okay, this is great. This is awesome. And school makes it really boring for you, unfortunately, when it could be really awesome to learn about, but we choose to do ridiculous things in schools and government-run compulsory schools. That's another topic for another day. But this is a system change. It's an order of magnitude change we are going into. And that's why these companies have no idea what's going on. I mean, you look at, Warren Buffett, we talk about the hippie bubble a lot here, and the older generation sunsetting, right? And you got a kick out of that line last time I threw out, the science evolves one funeral at a time, right? The world progresses, or science progresses one funeral at a time. And that comes for all of us, right? That'll be us in 20 years, 50 years, 60 years, right? So you have the older generation, like when Warren's gone at some point, whether it's 120 he gets to live to or whatever, but at some point someone else will run his company or whatever it is. And then what do? They put 1%, that younger guy or gal puts 1% into Bitcoin, or 10%. Can you imagine that 300 billion that's just sitting in cash melting away? So these are the things that are coming. Apple's seeing it, Warren Buffett's company. You look at Bitcoin companies. You look at Leon Wankum talking about real estate, and has been on Preston's podcast recently, and spoke over in Europe a couple of times at conferences, and just putting 1 to 10% of the cash flow. So a small part of what's coming back in, the return on real estate, putting those into reserves over the last handful of years on their real estate projects. And now that small little portion, the 1 or 10%, I can't remember the number, now equals like a quarter of the worth of the whole property, or a third of it, whatever it is. So just massive, just in 4 years, massive outsized over indexing of what's going on. And you have Fold doing it. You've got River, like you have these companies aside from MicroStrategy they're using this playbook, and it's going to become this watershed moment where this just cascades, where, like we said, whether it's Warren or Berkshire, I should say, or it's Apple, or some of these companies that all of a sudden are the traditional behemoths, and all of a sudden they take the step, and all of a sudden it's just game on. And we have companies that are countries that are mining Bitcoin that we don't even realize, right? We know some, we're finding out more. We know there's many more. This just keeps cascading because you can't stop Bitcoin, right? It changes you. You can't change it. It's code. It's number. It's just, there's nothing you can do to stop it. So the coming back full circle and landing the plane, the ECB, all these attacks from central banks, they're all disillusioned. They can't figure out what's going on, because at the end of the day, they have power. A lot of them have had power for really centuries, and they don't know any different. And they think truly, I mean, some of it you have to have almost empathy for them in a way, because they don't know any different. They just think, hey, they've been told their entire lives, you are the kings and queens of the world. Like, you are the smartest people. Imagine having that your entire life. Doesn't mean we need to keep them in power, but we need to have empathy for them as human beings and say, hey, you no longer are in power. And we do that by this sly roundabout way, this peaceful revolution that is changing, this monetary change that is going to completely change, like you and I talked offline at the end of the day. Then 10 years from now, between 3D printing, AI, nuclear, all the things that are happening, we are not going to recognize what life looks like. It's going to be amazing, but as we talked about too, Opti, I mean, it's going to be chaos in here. We've talked about this many times. Jeff Booth just talked about it recently on one of the podcasts he was on, where it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be unbelievable on the backside, but it's going to be chaotic going through it. And this is just kind of some of those steps along the way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think one of the most interesting aspects, and I've said it on the show a while ago, when we were first speculating on when these big institutional managers and corporations were going to get into Bitcoin, or at least even start talking about Bitcoin, this idea that these corporations are huge, and you can see kind of some of the obstacles that they have to go through to even, make a move like going into Bitcoin. And again, I always likened it to the idea of like, it's the Titanic over there. These big behemoth corporations are the Titanic, and they can't just make quick moves like an individual can, or someone like Michael Saylor, who owns the majority of his own company. They have to, think about this, take this slow, do their due diligence, pass it to the shareholders. And so it takes a while for that Titanic to turn around, but we're seeing that they are turning around. And, being a little more cynical here, more, of what Brandon was saying, is like, if the dinosaurs want to maintain their power, then they're going to have to realize that there is a meteor on the horizon. And the only way to protect themselves is, of course, to adopt Bitcoin. So yes, the conversation is starting at 1% for the second largest company in the world, holding, market cap about $3 trillion. And 1%, you guys can do the quick math and fact check me on this, but hey, that's a significant portion of the Bitcoin market currently. And so if they start to dip their toes in the water, like someone said in the chat, when do we start talking about the 4-year cycle being broken and we're entering super cycle territory? I'm not going that far yet. I think we still have 4 more years in the cycle theory, but I think soon enough we will be seeing that S-curve adoption happen, and things are going to get super crazy. Anyways, let's get into the show because we have some more news for you guys. But of course, before we go on, I got to remind you guys to smash the like button, comment below, give us your thoughts. Of course, subscribe, help us push this into the algo so more people realize what is going on in the world. And of course, so they protect themselves by buying some Bitcoin. And again, got to pay the bills here, guys. I know you guys don't like this, but we got to pay the bills. We are a business after all. Make sure you go to bitcoinwell.com, buy real Bitcoin. They are on the mission to enable independence. You need to have a Bitcoin wallet to buy Bitcoin. This ensures that you will not get rug pulled by buying Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well. It is automatic self-custody by default. This is the way, guys. Of course, 2 things. First, make sure you're buying from Bitcoin-only companies because we want to ensure that the Bitcoin-only ecosystem is strong, but also make sure you're using self-custody by default platform. And of course, you can use the promo code simplybtc and you will get 3 tosses into the wishing well. And of course, the wishing well is just a gamified way for you guys to win some sats. So you have a chance to win up to 1 million sats. Get your Lightning wallets out because I'm going to do one for you guys right now. They got a funny little quote here usually. Oh, we got, let's go. A little Britney Spears quote here debuting in 1998. Okay, I see you, Adam. I see you. All right, redeem this. First person to scan this gets, where are we at today? 500 sats, generational wealth on a long enough time frame. Anyways, make sure you go to bitcoinwell.com and use a promo code simplybtc. And also, guys, if I see you in person, I've been working on something, and I might have a pretty cool hack for you guys, but I don't know if I can speak about it publicly yet. So, yeah, when I see you guys, maybe I'll spread that signal soon enough. I'm still a little concerned about whether I can talk about it publicly, but there's some cool stuff you can do on Bitcoin Well if you are in the States. But that's as much as I'm going to leak for you guys today. Go to bitcoinwell.com. Let's get into the show. Of course, guys. Once you buy some Bitcoin and you take it into cold storage, you need to make sure that you are stamping your seed in titanium. Make sure you are backing up your seed phrase and it isn't just written down on a piece of paper. These titanium plates, they've been put through the rigmarole, I think is the right word right now. They've been burnt. They've been thrown into the ocean to fight rust. They've been beat up by bulldozers. They have been tested to ensure that your seed phrase will be readable long-term and that your seed phrase will last the test of time. Of course, go to stampseed.com, get yourself a stamp seed kit, and use the promo of Simply to get 15% off. Okay. Okay, guys, moving in. Let's get to some of the numbers for today. Of course, I'm over here on Clark Moody's dashboard, and the Bitcoin price is currently at $67,690 or $680 now. And the current sats per dollar, aka how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, aka how much the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, is currently at 1,478 sats, or 147 bits for the bits maxi. I think the bits sats conversation is going to come back really, really strong once we break the six figures. But right now, everyone has something else to fight about, and it's not bits or sats. Current block height is 867,324. The current market cap in fiat terms, in dollar terms, is currently at $1.34 trillion. Again, what is that? Half of the Microsoft market cap is the Bitcoin total market cap, which means there's so much room to run. Bitcoin is way bigger than any one corporation, and or even bigger than one nation's GDP. This is a global phenomenon playing out. And hey, look at us. Look at us here. Okay. Bitcoin versus gold market cap is at 7.01%. We're not even at 10%. The gold market cap. Still so much room to run in the hard money gang. And the total percentage of Bitcoin will ever be issued is currently at 94.15%, which means 19,772,671.11 BTC is currently circulating. And we won't get the last Bitcoin, the last sat, till 2140. Might want to get some just in case it catches on. All right, guys. Well, as I was telling you guys in the beginning, and this is why I wanted to play this, there's probably a lot of stuff that I could have played today for the numbers, but I find it very interesting that now we have former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh basically saying what we've been saying for a long time about the powers that be, the politicians, the elite, the Fed, the international bankers. They've all been gaslighting us on the real definition of inflation. And now it's coming out from the highest positions, basically saying the same thing, that they keep manipulating the meaning and definition of inflation to obviously gaslight you and misdirect you from the root cause of inflation, which I will obviously tell you guys. It's very simple, but let's watch this video. Actually, I'm going to turn it up. I was going to jump in a little earlier or a little later here. Interesting. First off, I find it very interesting that, of course, this former Fed governor, that the sentiment has come to the point where we can actually have this conversation. I don't know if you guys caught the headline there from Squawk Box, but it was, did the Fed get it wrong? I think he's being political in this by saying, look, I don't think they're political. The central banks that I know aren't political. I would argue that all of the different takes we have gone on what causes inflation. You remember they kept saying inflation is transitory. And then, shortly after it was like highest inflation ever. And I would argue it's all been political because they have to continue. And, and this might be rough, harsh coming from me if you're just like an average casual viewer, but they had to gaslight us into believing that inflation is doing well, or rather that inflation is under control. And then last month, the Fed just cut by 50 basis points. And it almost seems like the Fed has broke the market because it's not reacting exactly how they thought it would. And yet most people seem to, I always reference The Big Short. Most people are walking in what looks like an Enya video. Like everything is going exactly as planned. Everything is good. They don't really care. And all of us Bitcoiners are like, hey, maybe it's that the fiat money's broken. Maybe that's the problem. And you want to buy some Bitcoin. That's a simple fix. And actually, one other thing that I found interesting, and shouts out to Joe Kernan. Is it? Yeah, Joe Kernan. I always call him Joe Kern. The true Bitcoin maxi on Squawk Box. It's interesting when former Fed governor said something on the lines of like, the economy is doing really strong. And Joe was like, well, the stock market, like, yes, the stock market is doing really well. The S&P 500 keeps hitting highs. And I think this is the detachment from reality and from what you see on the stock market. Us Bitcoiners would argue that all the data is BS. It's all manipulated. I forget who's the first one to tell me this, but I think it was Balaji on Twitter who was saying that when you talked about the Cold War, what you get is the Soviet Union would basically fudge all of the factory reports and all of the industry reports of what they're doing. Well, now we've gotten into a new financial Cold War where they're fudging all of the financial data to try to manipulate the economy so that it looks a lot stronger than it is. And even, again, referencing the earlier article or report from Microsoft, they even blatantly said it themselves. CPI is corrupt and manipulated, and this is the metric that everyone is looking to if you're not well educated, if you're not in the weeds about what's going on with the economy, to prove to them that the economy is doing well. And we don't even have to get into the manipulated unemployment numbers. You know, all of the economic numbers right now, as far as I'm concerned, are fake. The only real data in the world right now is the Bitcoin time chain. Bitcoin is the true stability. Bitcoin is the only data that we know for sure hasn't been manipulated. And if you are smart, like we say all the time, you update your operating system and you start to look through the world through the Bitcoin lens, and then you get a clearer picture. Again, you know, referencing the joke I just made earlier, like, how can a 65 IQ Bitcoiner like myself be able to predict what's going on with the economy better if my worldview and my economic data wasn't correct? It's very simple. Change your mind to a Bitcoin standard, and you can see through all of the lies coming out from the powers that be that are trying to gaslight us into believing that the economy is stronger and doing better than it is, when in reality, all of their actions are proving to us that it's completely opposite. I would argue that the international bankers, the central bankers of the world, in their closed door meetings are probably panicking right now, and they're doing whatever they can to kind of make the population seem a little more docile, expect that things are going well, that, you know, the money managers out there are doing a good job, when in reality, they might have lost control of the market. And I don't want to even take that risk for myself. Hence why I'm a Bitcoiner. Hence why we constantly tell you guys that you need to save in Bitcoin. You need to save in something that cannot be debased. Of course, everything divided by 21 million. All roads lead to inflation, which means all roads lead to people adopting Bitcoin. This is the way. Anyways, I've ranted. I've been ranting a lot today. Brandon, take up the mantle.
You got a lot on your mind. That's all. That's all. It's, you know, it's going to happen faster than you think, but it's also going to take a little time. Like we said earlier, it's chaos. There's going to be some chaos in between. There's, you know, you search Google trends and you look up Bitcoin. We're a fraction of what we were in the 2017 hype, the run up there. And then 2021 bubble was a fraction, you know, a quarter of what the 2017 bubble was. Well, we're at like a quarter of what the 2021 bubble is. So we're at a fraction of what people, you know, so we live in this world where, and then it makes me think of, on top of that, of the people not searching Bitcoin, not caring. We're in this world where it was going and making the rounds this week, that list of what voters care about, right? And the top three problems were the economy, right? Inflation, jobs, economy, all the same in essence, generally. And then the solutions at the bottom. You know, it's cryptocurrency. It should be Bitcoin, but the solution is literally 50 things away at the very bottom. Well, I'm not going to say what it was under, but that is how far we are away. But also this hippie bubble that this thing is going to change so quick, like an iceberg. I mean, we talk about the Titanic. That's a great analogy of Bitcoin. Another great analogy, just right aside from that, is the iceberg, where this bubble, the demographics are changing so quickly. And the beauty of the internet and social media is that we get to see these things happen in real time now. I mean, for thousands of years, you didn't know what the king was doing. You had no idea what the monarch was up to. You had no idea what the despot was up to. You had no idea what Genghis Khan was doing. No idea. You had zero clue what was going on. All you heard was all of a sudden the British were coming, or all of a sudden, you know, you just heard screams because people were invading the other side of your tribe's camp. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, I've got 4 seconds to make a decision. Now we have the benefit of, you know, yes, there are ills of social media, but all the benefits of social media are we get to see the insane chaos and these people tripping over themselves all the time. The ruling class everywhere, they're not elites, they're the ruling class, the people that have been in power and put in power, or just born into power for centuries. that is ending because of the new monetary shift we are going into. So I think this is really the thing that is going to drive everything, and that's why this next decade you have to hold on. And how do you hold on? You nailed it, Opti. It's denominating your life in Bitcoin. I mean, I remember Dr. Jeff Ross saying this over the last handful of years, and many Bitcoiners saying this, obviously. But denominating your life, like tracking your net worth, tracking your finances, but then tracking it in Bitcoin terms, so you can have the dollar amount or whatever you're tracking in whatever fiat currency, but then have it right there in your spreadsheet and have it in Bitcoin terms as well. So you can see the difference, and you can see the contrast and what's happening, and how your net worth, you might have a $10,000 net worth or $100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. And it looks like it might be growing over time, but when you denominate in Bitcoin, it's actually getting less. But the beauty of that is, someone said in the chat earlier, is that you're actually seeing the truth. You're actually seeing what's actually happening. It's all prices, again, like Opti just mentioned a minute ago, it's all prices going to zero, because that's what deflation is. And the crazy part is that in technology, I should say, and is technology is driving all prices to zero. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to, not only because we're a debt-based system, but governments are going to have to print so much, it's going to make people's eyes bleed, because you have technology in itself, nuclear, AI, 3D, the robotics, all the things that are coming. We talked about this demographic and technological shift. They have to print out their eyeballs just to try to stave off this deflation that is coming. It's so incomprehensible. And again, we talked about this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, because it's right in front of everybody. And it's like this chart where everyone's focusing on, they know the problems, they got the problem, but they don't have the solution. The solution's right there for them, and it's just it's hiding in plain sight. And so I think that's where, your life gets cheaper in Bitcoin. You got Stanley Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones coming out again. Basically, we talked about the 4-year cycle. Well, here's the 4-year cycle in terms of billionaire hedge fund guys that are smart as hell, and they're coming out and saying the same thing they did 4 years ago. Oh man, wow, people are really holding this stuff just like we thought, and why we got in 4 or 5 years ago, and here we are. Yep, I'm still long gold, Bitcoin, and maybe some short dated treasuries, right? Just so the cash they have they can get in out fast and buy more gold and Bitcoin. And then anyone in long dated bonds, like you were telling the story earlier, Opti, anyone in long dated bonds, treasuries, good luck. You're gone. I mean, you're gone. And that's where this whole repricing mechanism, insurance, the bond market, the real estate, all the value, the utility value will be left. That's about it. The bond market might exist. The government bond market, who knows? I mean, that might be 100 years from now. But that's why this is so important. It's that big of a shift. People, the early adopters are seeing it. The people that can recognize patterns, or at least have the time to. Most people are on the hamster wheel and can't see what's coming, whether it's their fault or their own, whatever the situation might be. We have to empathize to whatever situation someone might be in. But that is the magnitude of what we're going into, and that's why it's so imperative to keep stacking sats as much as you can and keep hodling for as long as you can, because this is going to play out and your life will continue to get cheaper. And it is the true control in the experiment. You can't do a 7th grade science experiment without a control. How are you going to do an experiment with 1,000 variables? That's like living your life on a fiat standard. Good luck. You need the control. You need everything divided by 21 million.
I love that, Brandon. I love that framing of Bitcoin is the control. Bitcoin is the fixed thing here in regards to everything that's happening. And I just want to touch on one thing before we move on to today's news story, which is pretty interesting. This is why we're seeing the freak out coming from the corporate press, coming from, the billionaire elite class, those that are in power, the politicians. This is why they're freaking out about social media. This is why Elon Musk is getting attacked on his ownership of Twitter. Say what you want about Musk, but ever since he, quote unquote, freed the bird, you're seeing this very strong movement against freedom of speech. And they're trying to pin a bunch of different things on why freedom of speech is bad. Of course, we could probably list a gambit of reasons why they think freedom of speech is bad, but it really goes back to just what Brandon just said. And we reference this article all the time by Nayib Bukele, do not drink the elite's Kool-Aid. Remember in like the 50s, there was like 5 TV news stations. And now we're in a very similar situation. It's just not 5, news channels on the television now. It's basically 5 companies that own all of the media distribution platforms. And this is why you get these, narratives that get pushed out, all of what happened in 2020. And you're seeing that now that people are not trusting these institutions, not trusting these corporations. And basically, young people aren't even watching TV or watching the news. They're getting all their news from social media. You're seeing that they are freaking out because they can no longer monopolize and control the flow of information. And this is why we're also seeing an attack on free speech currently, is because peer-to-peer communication on the internet is becoming the new status quo. And yes, there is, some problems and trade-offs that come with that. But this is why they want to control information, so that we can't get this message out to other people and they inform themselves. Remember, they told us the other a couple years ago, like, doing your own research is bad. Like, what is this? They're literally telling you, stop critical thinking, trust this, bro, trust the experts. And Bitcoiners over here like, no, don't trust, verify. Or, even on the flip side, like, you can trust people you like, but also verify the information. And we tell you guys that all the time on the show. Like, hey, we're human. We're not infallible. We make mistakes, but, verify the information and try to connect the dots for yourself, and then come to us and we'll get the feedback loop going so that we are better informed, so that everyone can understand what's going on. And this is what's playing out right now. Humanity is waking up, and they're trusting, or rather searching for new sources of information. And it's making the elite, quote unquote elite. I like how Brandon said the ruling class freak out, because no one cares to go to the corporate press anymore. We've all understood a very simple truth, that they are propaganda machines. Hence why I always troll that, I'm just a Bitcoin propagandist here, guys. I got my orange tinted glasses on, and we stay bullish on Bitcoin. Anyways, let's get into today's news story. We got an interesting development coming out from Pennsylvania.
Special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
Okay, boys and girls, I'm not going to model it. Maybe I'll model a little bit, but get yourself a Passport by Foundation. They're beautiful. I literally used it this morning, and it blows my mind just how easy it is when you connect it to the Envoy app. Completely open source, never touches the internet, uses partially signed Bitcoin transactions. It's beautiful. I'm becoming a huge Passport maxi. I think it's the best Bitcoin signing device out there. Okay, let's get into this news story, guys. Maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't, but very interesting developments coming out of Pennsylvania. And, say what you want about Dennis Porter out there, but hey, he's doing his best to interact with the legacy system. And I think this is a good initiative. So here we got just the screenshot of this House bill, and it goes on our Twitter. Breaking: Pennsylvania House passes Bitcoin rights bill protecting residents' rights to self-custody their Bitcoin. Excuse me. and further using Bitcoin as payment. So I'm over here. We're going to read a little bit of this Fox Business article here. Headline: Pennsylvania House passes bipartisan bill to bring regulatory clarity to digital assets. Crypto ownership, Bitcoin and shitcoin in Pennsylvania has also accelerated, with 1.5 million residents owning some form of digital assets. Again, if you want to go read the whole article, because I'm not going to read it, I'm just going to read the beginning of this, go to foxbusiness.com. And here we go. So, exclusive. Pennsylvania becomes the latest state to pass a bill establishing some regulatory clarity surrounding digital assets, continuing a trend where legislatures and governors across the country attempt to provide some rules of the road for the U.S. crypto industry. The move comes amid continued confusion on the federal level over quote-unquote crypto regulation and which federal agencies should take the lead in enforcing basic investment rules on the still nascent $2 trillion digital asset market. Of course, 1.34-ish trillion in Bitcoin and the rest in shitcoin. But on Wednesday, the Pennsylvania House of Representatives passed a bill that protects residents' rights to self-custody digital assets, ensures their ability to use Bitcoin as a payment, and provide explicit guidelines around taxing Bitcoin transactions. House Bill 2481, dubbed the Bitcoin Rights Bill, sailed through with strong bipartisan support, winning by an overwhelming majority of 176 votes to 26. The vote included 76 Democrats and unanimous backing from all 100 Republican members. Interesting. The bill will move on to the Republican-led Pennsylvania Senate after the election, and if passed, onto Governor Josh Shapiro's desk. The bill, crafted by outside Bitcoin advocacy group Satoshi Action Fund, again, shouts out Dennis Porter, is the latest effort to help lawmakers understand the nuances of blockchain technology and Bitcoin. We could have just eliminated the blockchain technology and just said Bitcoin, but hey, it's Fox News. Satoshi Action Fund has succeeded in helping write and pass similar legislation in 20 other states, with 4 bills becoming law in Oklahoma, Louisiana, Montana, and Arkansas. The group's main priority is to help mainstream Bitcoin at the state level and encourage state lawmakers to do what the federal government has yet to do: establish some clear rules of the road for crypto and normalize it as a mode of transaction. Some state laws involving financial products sold to small investors can be controversial. The federal jurisdiction surrounding modes of payment methods often trumps state law. Meanwhile, the federal government has yet to define which digital assets, aside from Bitcoin and the mother asshole that all shitcoins come from, are securities like stock or bonds and fall under disclosure rules imposed by the SEC. Here, we'll read a little more. A separate federal agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, oversees crypto that is deemed a so-called commodity with a lighter regulatory touch. Crypto regulation has morphed into a potent political issue in an election year, with Republicans and the party's presidential nominee, former President Donald Trump, championing fewer rules to curry favor with some 50 million Americans who believe the Biden administration's heavy regulatory hand has stymied innovation. In such polarizing times, it's great to see both sides of the aisle come together to further innovation and prioritize security for Pennsylvanians who own and transact with Bitcoin or with cryptocurrency. Sorry. Anyways, you get the gist of this. So we got another bill, at least coming out of Pennsylvania, and I really like Marty's take here. Shouts out to Marty Bent. Of course, Tales from the Crypt. He's a longtime Bitcoin content creator. I probably personally wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Marty Bent. And his take here: proud to be from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania today. And this is the real kicker. I've said it for years. States will lead the way when it comes to protecting the rights of individual Bitcoiners. Having the right to self-custody codified into law is important to ensuring Bitcoin remains freedom money. To that, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, I'm not even looking at the chat, but I can probably guess what the chat is saying. Bitcoin don't need no sneaking politicians. Obviously, I always kind of look at the same way, like, yes, having some political favor in regards to Bitcoin clarity and having some cover over our Bitcoin self-custody and our right to use it obviously is a good thing. But I'm kind of, maybe I am a little of a, anarcho-capitalist, libertarian-leaning person where I'm like, I don't need your okay for your permission for me to use Bitcoin. It's not illegal. It's permissionless. It's censorship resistant. And it's something I say constantly on the show. You can't ban Bitcoin. You can only ban yourself from Bitcoin. So I'd love to see that states are actively taking Bitcoin seriously. Of course, remember how America works. hey, it may be illegal on the federal level, but on the state level, if they ensure your freedoms to things, then you can do it, a la what's happening with the marijuana industry. And so I think this is further trend of that idea that maybe, I know Trump has been talking about Bitcoin, and the transition team for the new presidential candidacy has been talking about Bitcoin, aka the Republicans, have been talking favorably about Bitcoin and saying that they will clear up some regulatory concerns. They're trying to allow Bitcoin. They're trying to make, quote unquote, Bitcoin America, the crypto hub of the world. So we're seeing that this narrative, this trend is it's definitely going towards our direction. When you kind of compare that to the last 4 years that we've had under the Biden administration, where they've actively been fighting Bitcoin for the longest time. And now we're seeing that again, referencing the very beginning, people have to take Bitcoin seriously. And shout out to Morpheus. He clipped me the other day on our Twitter from the show. I don't know, what was it, Tuesday or something, that you cannot fight Bitcoin now. If a politician wants to maintain their power, then they're going to have to embrace Bitcoin. And Bitcoin as a political movement is growing. Yes, right now the numbers are roughly at like 50 million people, which is still a significant number. But as that grows, it's literally going to be a landmine, metaphorical landmine, that if you step on Bitcoin, you try to fight the honey badger, then you're going to lose your position. If that's the given, if the politicians still are restrained by the people. But I think this is another great development in regards to Bitcoin being taken seriously. Of course, as a Bitcoiner, it's like, okay, politicians are going to do politician things. I don't think we necessarily need a law to ensure our right to self-custody. That right to life, liberty, and property is enshrined in the Constitution. But you could also make some arguments that maybe our politicians don't follow the Constitution anymore. And so, hey, politicians like to make laws. And so I love to see that they are engaging with Bitcoin on, with some optimism in a fair hand. So new development, we'll see if it really goes into law. But I thought this is an interesting development for all of us Bitcoiners that, hey, it may be moving slowly, but it's happening and people are taking Bitcoin seriously. And soon enough, at least as an American Bitcoiner, America will embrace Bitcoin. And I think they're going to secure their place as the world superpower. But I don't know. What do I know? I'm speculating. Anyways, Brandon, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the thing we talk about all the time is the Plato quote, right? If you're not involved in politics, you'll be governed by your inferiors. There's no better evidence than in America the last 100 years. And people being apathetic, people being, all of our ancestors, all of the older generations, unfortunately, just getting fat and happy. And we're now stuck with the problem because we have it too good. I'm libertarian. I believe the whole system's corrupt, so I'm not doing anything. I mean, at the end of the day, if you overwhelm the system with support, if you overwhelm the entire system, there's nothing they can do about it. The problem is no one does anything, whether it's voting or not. Show up to a PTA meeting, show up to a local, township meeting, a county meeting, do something. But when you don't hold people's feet to the fire, what happens? I mean, it just logically we know what happens, but also we have the last 100 years to see what exactly happens. We devolve into chaos. We devolve into democracy. We evolve into democracy, as Nolan Bowerley would say. That is what happens. It's majority rule, democracy. Newsflash: we're a republic. We're a federal republic, constitutional republic. We ain't a democracy. We might use some democratic means, but we've let ourselves devolve into a democracy. So we could wax poetic about this all day long, something I'm, as Optino, is very passionate about. However, I am a Bitcoin on your tongue maxi. So whatever Dennis is doing, awesome. Whatever Simply Bitcoin is doing, awesome. Whatever we're doing with Bitcoin trading cards, awesome. Whatever people are doing to get Donald Trump to say the word Bitcoin, awesome. All those things are amazing. Can we get Harris to, Democrats to the Bitcoin convention? Great. I want as many people saying the word Bitcoin as humanly possible, whatever that means. And that means the 3%, again, something we've talked about for a long time, the 3% fought the Revolutionary War, at least in the beginning, and were the people that were committed to it. Does that sound a lot like Bitcoin today, where there's a couple of percent of us in an echo chamber, making memes? I mean, back then, they showed up with their muskets, and they did. I mean, it didn't, not at first, though. I mean, it was years of going back and forth and arguing with the king and arguing with the powers that be, the ruling class, and eventually it came to that. Now, I hope that the chaos that we're about to go through doesn't turn into that. However, we do know that Americans, coming full circle here at the end of the day, we get apathetic. We're humans. We take the path of least resistance. We flow like water. We just find the easiest spot. We sit in our lazy boys. We got football on. We're watching whatever it might be. If you're not in America, maybe you're watching soccer. If you're in America, you're watching football or something like that, right? And you're happy as can be. I got my 6-pack. I got my feet up. I got my fantasy sports. I got my bread and circus. Who cares? That going to one PTA meeting a year doesn't matter to me, because whatever, I'm tired, work was too long, I'm on the hamster wheel, whatever the excuse might be. Well, we've now seen the remnants of those decisions, 1 trillion decisions a day, going the wrong direction, compounded on each other over 100-year time. This is exactly where we find ourselves, where we have a generation of kids, people 40, 50 and under, that have to figure this out now. And that's why we are moving to this step change, like we talked about earlier. We're moving to this new system and saying, hey, this system don't work anymore. This bond system, this government bond system that's immoral, that's paid off. I'm going to give you government that doesn't provide anything. I'm going to give you cash, and you're going to guarantee that you're going to tax me and my children in the future. That's how you're going to pay it back to me. What kind of system is that? I mean, that's why the system is collapsing, because we have this ass backward system that works really for a few people at the top. Really, I guess that's all you can say at the end of the day. Works for the military industrial complex, works for the people ruling things in the halls of power, but that's it. And that's why the system is changing. So if you don't get involved, and it doesn't just mean voting. Now, I mean, nowadays we have voting with our feet, we have voting with our wallet, voting with our voice, and then you have the ammo box and the ballot box, traditionally, where those are the two. Now we have these other 3 ways where you can easily move to a different jurisdiction. You can easily vote with your wallet now, or your voice through social media, like we've talked about. So if you're not doing one of those things, one of those 5 things, what are you doing at the end of the day? And just willingly, blissfully, I know a lot of people like, well, shut up, Brandon. I'd rather have my head in the sand. What kind of way to go through life is that? I mean, that just pisses me off, quite frankly. Why be here? Why are you here on Earth at the end of the day? It's to further and advance humanity. What are we doing? How can you ever say that as a human being? So again, I could talk for hours about this. This is the bane of my existence. This is my life has kind of gone around this question of, like, not just why are we here, but why are we not involved? What are we doing? Of the greatest country, at least here in America, for those that live in America, and the greatest, in the country itself is great because of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And those ideals that we held that were self-evident to logical human beings, and we have just let them. We've become apathetic. We've become indifferent, and we don't care. And the end of the day, people only start caring again when they're kicked in the face. Unfortunately, maybe 100 times, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. We seem to not learn lessons until, boy, is it dire. And that's where we're going to get to, unfortunately. And that's why we do what we do. And that's why it's so important to do shows like this, to make trading cards, to interview people, put out content, write blogs, talk to your family members, go to PTA to meet. Whatever it is you can do it, because we want to minimize the collateral damage at the end of the day. That's all we're trying to do. How can we minimize the collateral damage so that this doesn't happen on our watch? It doesn't get as bad as history has shown us it can get. So what can we do to minimize that damage and move into this next transition phase and have the landing truly, not the Fed soft landing, but a true softer landing going through this transition?
Bars, absolute bars. Love it, Brandon. All right. Well, we brought up Bitcoin trading cards, so I do want to give you an opportunity to plug that. Though it is Friday, and I do have some memes, so we'll see what happens. We'll talk Bitcoin trading cards for a moment, and then if Brandon doesn't rant too long, I do have some memes here for you guys. So we'll do that right now for you guys. All right, let's go. All right, boys and girls, mainly boys, but some girls. We love the ladies out there that watch Simply Bitcoin, but it's mainly dudes. It's okay. It is what it is. Anyways, make sure you go to orangepoapp.com. Stack friends who stack sats. Maybe you'll find a girlfriend there. Maybe you will. I don't know. Maybe. Hey, I know that's not a dating app officially, but hey, everything's a dating app if you're a Chad Bitcoiner. So here we go. Get an Orange Pill app if you're the soul crazy Bitcoiner out there. Create an event, get in touch with other Bitcoiners. I think kind of what Brandon and I talk about here constantly is this idea that, talking about Bitcoin on the internet is cool and all, but until you take these relationships into real life, That's where the real power happens. Surround yourself with like-minded individuals. You need to surround yourself with Bitcoiners. And this is not only how you maintain your sanity, but how you may, in fact, protect yourself if we find ourselves in another crazy situation like we found ourselves in 2020. Anyways, we are on YouTube, so can't go too far on that. But we got Brandon here. And Brandon, fellow content creator, doing your interviews and stuff. And of course, working with the Bitcoin trading cards. Shouts out to Aladdin. Love him. Actually, I don't know if I can sneak peek it, but I think there's a Simply Bitcoin trading card in the works here. So Brandon, let's plug Bitcoin trading cards right quick. And then I know you're a fan of the memes. So let's do a quick Bitcoin trading card shill. And then I'll pull up the memes for everyone.
Yeah, we'll keep it pithy. We have Series 3. I mean, like we said a minute ago, any way you can help. I mean, this is something that I have 4 little children, and it's, how can we Trojan horse the world? And everyone has their own ways of doing it. And what Aladdin started and created, and then there's so many people that have joined in to help with the company. And, the first series he was giving out at Pacific Bitcoin 2022, the actual orange pill in a pack series. And we're now in Series 3, which is coming out. Pre-sales actually starts November 1st, this week, next week coming up. And the first series sold out in 3 months, and then the second series sold out in about 3 weeks. These ones, I would assume, will probably sell out pretty quickly again. For collectors out there, there's they go for a certain price, and then on the secondary market, they start going for a lot more. So I've seen a lot of people buy cards with fiat and then sell them for sats, sell them for way more sats than they would have got initially. So if you're a collector, or if you like making some more sats, great. That's an amazing way to get into it as well. But it's also the education behind it is the Trojan horse, the orange pill in a pack, the OPP pack. That's why it's called that. But it's, how can we get to the normies? How can we get to the normal person? And all of a sudden they're reading the cards and they're like, oh, freedom card, do your own research. What does that mean? Should I get off my couch? Should I get off my lazy boy instead of watching the Minnesota Vikings and the LA Rams play last night? And should I actually do something in my life? Or, should I just keep watching things? Bitcoin exchange, reading about all these things, the Bitcoin standard. Oh, what book is that? Reading about the gold standard, reading about the Nixon shock, reading about the Bretton Woods agreement. All these things are inside of Bitcoin trading cards. And then the back of the cards explain what is actually going on in said artwork, which is all original artwork from Bitcoin artists. So Aladdin and then his team of artists that work on the cards, just gorgeous art. And it is, whether it's young or old, men or women, the community has been growing rapidly over the last year and a half plus. And it's an unbelievably based community. It's a very, very, very similar community to the Simply Bitcoin community, to be totally honest. I spend a lot of time, obviously, in both of these communities and our Telegram chat. So there's very based community, very hardcore, freedom-loving, red-pilled, orange-pilled people. So it's an unbelievable community to be a part of in the Telegram chat. But we do have Series 3 coming up soon on the website. You guys see the bundles will be coming up. And the ethos at the end of the day is obviously education. What are we going to do? How are we going to doing something else? We were just at a front row card show in Vegas. We were just at a normie trading card conference this past weekend, the whole team. So doing that, how can we get out true boots on the ground education to the normies? There's not a lot of companies doing that right now. And Bitcoin Trading Cards is one of the companies out into the normie masses, having conversations, creating content with normies, and trying to incept that Bitcoin Trojan horse into society. So check it out. The website's right there. Opti shared it. Big launch here coming up, and they're going to go fast. So if you're into that stuff, check it out. But it's appreciate you guys letting me shill it here today.
Love it, Brandon. And interesting story before I get to the memes. And then we don't even, full disclosure, full transparency, we don't even have the meme review updated up here. So I'm just going to go straight into the memes. But one funny story that I did hear from, I think it was you or Aladdin. I think it was Aladdin. You guys were at a conference or convention for just, normie about cards, and people coming up to you guys about, wow, I didn't know that the CEO of Bitcoin had a trading card company. Like, this is amazing. And it just goes to show how much education really needs to happen on the grassroots level. people still don't understand what Bitcoin is, what the movement is about, what it means to save in something that cannot be debased. And, a lot of people kind of tune out when it comes to economics. And I know inflation is becoming a very big concern right now. It's one of the hot button topics in regards to the elections. But it's just incredible how few people understand what is really going on. And I think you guys are doing a great job. And like I said, if you like Simply Bitcoin and you like trading cards, I think we might get one coming out soon. And also, actually, one more thing before I go into, maybe, wink, wink. The story of Nico was telling me he signed one of his trading cards, and on the black market or the secondary market, it wouldn't be black market, secondary market, someone was selling it for like $500, and he's like, "Wait, what the hell is going on here? This is crazy!" Absolutely incredible.
The trading card market is billions and billions and billions of dollars. So it's a wildly massive market. Really, really quick though. Someone in here said that this podcast made me cringe tremendously. There's so much propaganda with asking people to vote harder. If I gave you 5 different things, plus going to meetings and galvanizing people around you, between what Opti and I said and have always talked about, it's not about voting harder. You can't vote harder, and that's the whole point of all this. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. It's incumbent on people to not be lazy and to persuade other people and get people off their ASS in order to go do things, because voting harder clearly isn't what's going to work.
Love it. Okay. There's no NFTs, guys. This is a physical NFT.
Real NFTs, guys. Real physical, actual thing.
It's a trading card. Okay. All right, guys. I know we're going a little long. I could wrap up today's show, but you guys have been asking for this for a while. So here is the meme review. We haven't done it in a while. I know you guys are yelling at me, so I'll run through this quickly. Usually, I review the memes and then you drop a score in the chat, and then we bring up some scores. So hopefully we do this quickly. I should be able to get this under a couple of minutes. So first one is by Bitcoin_Teddy on Twitter. And he goes, Bitcoin isn't about escaping the system. It's about creating a new one. And here you go, written in Sharpie. This is probably the main message we got to get across to people. It's not about recreating the old system. It's about building a better system. And that's what every one of us is out here doing. This next one, it's just a screenshot of a very famous book that you should probably read. I would argue it's a behemoth. I've read that. I read this in when I was 17 or 18. And when I read it, I was like, no, this is a conspiracy theory. No, this isn't really how things happen. And then one of my professors was talking about it. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Maybe I'm ahead of the game. This is exactly how the fiat system works. This is exactly how the Fed was created. Anyways, here's a screenshot, of course, of The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. A second look at the Federal Reserve. And we got shouts out to Mitchell Hoddle, an epic zoomer out here. And he goes, inflation is by design. Don't forget that. This is a message again, encapsulating everything we talked about on the show. Inflation is by design. This next one is actually hilarious. I think he's trolling Bitcoiners here a little bit, but maybe he's a part of irresponsibly long master, so maybe he's a master bull here. But I found this one hilarious. At JDC493, this is the obvious Vince McMahon meme where he's looking at stuff and he gets more and more excited. The first one is, he's looking at it and he goes, buy the company that's mining the Bitcoin, aka Mara, and it looks at him, oh, okay, and then it looks a little crazier eyes, buy the company that's selling the Bitcoin. We will not name this shitcoin company, so in exchange, and it's like, oh, and then it's buy the company that's buying the Bitcoin. MicroStrategy. I thought this was hilarious. You could I know MicroStrategy is doing really well, but you could also just buy the spot Bitcoin. I know MicroStrategy currently is outperforming Bitcoin, and it might continue, but I just find that funny. Buy the company that's buying Bitcoin. It sounds like taking secondary steps to just buying Bitcoin. I don't know. Maybe again, I'm just a 65 IQ person over here. This next one, not really a meme, but it was very interesting and kind of cool. Actually, my first take on this is like, I don't really like this statue. Like what? Not really a fan of the statue. But when you kind of think about it, where he looks kind of invisible, kind of playing on anonymity, it's kind of growing on me. But anyways, the city of Lugano has unveiled a statue of Satoshi. It's him sitting on a laptop, and if you look at it from the side, you can see the whole figure. You know, a hoodie. What do they call us? Man, I forget what they call us. Like cloaked anonymous Bitcoiners out here. He's in a hoodie, looking at his laptop in the I forget, Indian sitting style. I forget what we used to call it. Anyways, but when you look at it on from straight ahead, it's like he's invisible, which I think that's a pretty cool touch, though. You know, I'm a more of a fan of like Greek and Roman statues, but I guess in today's modern times, I guess this is a cool statue. I want to see some marble. You know, when a statue of Satoshi chiseled out of white marble. Let's get some throwbacks here. But hey, cool. I guess it's cool. All right, this next one is I'm going to read CK's tweet first, because I think it good encapsulation of what everything's going on today's show. Normies keep asking themselves, what if the Bitcoin people are right? Newsflash, it's obvious the Bitcoin people are right. Are you normies even paying attention to all the crazy around us, or do you need a message from God in your sleep to figure this out? And then Lyd Alden drops a meme, and it's oh man, I'm blanking on it. It's Michelangelo, right? Painting where the Adam and God, you know, I really like the background of it, where like Adam, you know, it doesn't have an outstretched finger, and God fully outstretched, trying to get in touch with him. And anyway, she repurposed this. Just took a screenshot of God, and it's pointing at you. Buy Bitcoin. LOL. Do you need a message from God? Well, the message is buy Bitcoin. This is the way. Okay. All right, guys. Drop your meme review score, and I will read them live. Actually, I almost forgot how we do this. So, Brandon, let's do yours first while I set everything up. What is your meme review score for today? Spin a minute.
I've got, you know how I roll. I've got a USA Bitcoin hockey jersey. Let's go. From our boy, Holler's Official. So from Canadian Bitcoin Conference, look at that bad boy. That was the game-winning jersey right there, too.
That was the game-winning jersey.
Let's go. 9-4, Americans or Canadians. Sorry, boys. Sorry, Murph.
Let's go. No, don't ever apologize to the Canadians.
Sorry, I'm not sorry.
USA is superior. There are ugly redheaded stepchild up there. USA is superior. USA.
Oh man, unreal.
I'm really only trolling because you know, Adam from Bitcoin Well, and they're in Canada, and every time I see them, I'm like, Adam, hey, this is cool and all, but like, you know, the only country that matters is America, right? Like, I don't care what you do in Canada. Yeah, I don't care what you do in Canada. It's all about America, bro. America. All right. Anyways, I'm going to give it my stamp seed. Can you see that? Wait, you can't really see it. I don't think it's going to focus on you. Let me see. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
My Bitcoin stamp seed stamp. Here, let me full screen it so you can kind of see it. I don't think it's gonna work, but it's the B. It's the Bitcoin logo stamp seed. Let's see. Can you see it? There
you go. Yeah, you can see it right there. Stamp seed. Yep.
All right. Kind of hard for you guys to see it. All right. Well, the show is about to wrap up, guys. So let's get a few of these scores before we roll this out. It's been a minute. I know you guys want the meme review. It's Friday, so we'll do a little longer show today for you guys. And then, of course, if you guys tune out at the end with the meme review, like, I'm going to nuke the meme review. Throw the tomatoes all you want. It is what it is. Now, I will bring the meme review every once in a while. All right, here we go. First meme review score is by Rave Elevator, and it goes, I score the memes. 1 word salad from a presidential candidate. Yes, exactly. All right, we got multi-stacker, 5 peppers for new system, 4 peppers for God. Okay, I endorse this message. Next one is by Robert Schmidt, and he goes, meme score, Opti loves Greco-Roman wrestling. Dang. All right, you got me there. I definitely set myself up for that one. Next one is by Mickle, and he goes, meme review score, Opti's lettuce. Okay. All right. Next one is SP. He goes, I give these memes the calluses on Opti's hand from lifting us all up every day. Yes, I have man hands here. I do have calluses. I know I work on the computer, guys, but I do have calluses. I have man hands. Sorry, not sorry. All right, let's see. Over here on Rumble, we got out of compliance. I give the meme score 1. Dark Satoshi statue. Let's go. Visnock meme score. Wagey, get back in the KG. Oh, man. All right. Next one. Slippery Rabbit meme score. Don't trust. Verify hoodie from FOMO21. Okay. All right, we got a free plug here. Okay, all right. Well, we didn't run out of meme scores. We got the buzzer. All right, buzzer time. All right, guys. Well, we made it through the week. Feels good. Wow, look, I'm sweating over here. Sheesh. You can tell. Boy's putting in work. Calluses and armpit sweat. Your boy is killing it over here. This is a real job. Anyways, Brandon, let's plug your socials real quick before I roll this one out. Twitter, and then let's plug the Bitcoin trading card website one more time. Yeah.
Bitcoin Trading Cards website is btc-tc.com or btc-cards.com. And then my socials are Brandon_Gentile, Twitter, YouTube, everything. So you go check us out there. We do podcasts, interview people all across Bitcoin, freedom, macro space, maybe some political people in there too, that like freedom. And so that's our Bitcoin Trading Cards podcast that I roll. And so that's it. Go check it out. We'd love to have you in the community, and similar to this one. So thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
Let's go. Appreciate it, Brandon. First of all, obviously appreciate you always coming off the bench when you can. We got a solid rotating of members coming on the Bitcoin show so that we can keep giving you guys content 5 days a week. You know what? I don't know what the math is, but 365 days, I don't know, 300 something plus days a year. Of course. Also, just appreciate you, Brandon. Good friend. I love Brandon. Go follow him. Stick around on the back end, and we'll chat before I roll this one out. All right, guys. Actually, one last thing. I do want to. We got one more meme review score, and I'm only going to give it the shout out, even though I hit the buzzer. It's by Scratch9, and he goes score 65 for IQ. Confirmed. All right, confirmed. Okay. All right. It's okay. All right, guys. We went a little long today. But of course, it's Friday, so you got to wait till Monday. We go live 12:15 p.m. Well, after 12:15. 12:15 is the official time on YouTube, but we start usually 10 minutes after. It is what it is, guys. So come 10 minutes after, you already know. Anyways, it is the weekend, guys, so get outside, touch some grass, get some vitamin D on your body. This is health advice. Call your loved ones. The person you're yelling at on Twitter is going to be there when you get back. Anyways, watch out for Dante dropping a video tonight on our channel. Of course, Bitcoin Simply by Dante. And we'll be back tomorrow. Nico will be back on Monday as well. On that note, boys and girls, this has been your boy Opti, and we are out. Another week down. Peace out.
By bitcoinwell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.